off of that. At the same time, other people do the opposite, and they have this grand idea, and they're like, all right, time to make the next Breath of the Wild. And it doesn't work out very well because there's hundreds of people that work on that for years, and they all have like 50 times as much experience as you have. So
50 times 0 is still 0.
infinity times as much as William up here. So really just doing something that you can already have, like you can see the end as you start it. You're like, all right, you know, in the next couple weeks here I can probably finish it, or in the next like couple months. And you know, if you're, yeah. We'll
just do it. Be like Mike.
Yes.
Yeah. So be aware of scope for sure. If you don't define what your game is going to be and what you want out of your game, you're going to end up adding a ton of stuff because it'll all sound cool and you won't really understand, or you won't have like a clear vision for it. So a common term is scope creep, and that's just like adding more and more as the project goes on, which is understandable. You know, you're making stuff, you're getting excited, you're like, oh, wouldn't this be cool, and that would be cool. But you have to really be careful and start trying to like cut as much out as you can so that you keep your actual, like, what's good about it. Because if you get too much, not only might it be poorly designed, you have too much on your plate. You can't possibly do all of it.
Yeah. And especially as college students, like, I don't know if the freshmen have started to notice, but it doesn't take long before you run out of time very quickly, and you don't have much time left to do this kind of stuff. So keeping a reasonable scope is very important, and constantly looking at it and saying, is this still the same scope that I thought it was? Because it's very easy to come up with a brand new idea and add it to your game, and then you do that 5 times and all of a sudden your game is 10 times as big as it was when you started it, and you can no longer finish it in 3 weeks, and now it's going to take a year to finish. Like, at that point you could have just finished your game and started a whole new game, or redid the whole game because, and with everything in mind. Like, even if you do have a grand idea, it's okay to do a basic idea. There's so many games out there that are like the second or third or fourth iteration of them is the great one, and no one even knows about the first one. Like, just look at Valve, for example. How many 2s does Valve have?
All of them.
Yeah, exactly. I could probably count 6 2s between all of Valve's games, so there's no need to worry about your first game being the perfect game, even if it is your like dream idea. You can start off by making a small portion of that game and build off of that, and it might help when you actually make that game later because people already know your previous game and want to play a new remastered version of it.
Also, adding on to that, like Super Meat Boy was a Flash game initially, and then they remade it with Spelunky. But with scope creep as well, with our last 2 workshops were really great for thinking of ideas, but we also, since we knew we weren't making it, we also just kind of threw all the ideas in there. And it's really easy to just like be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this later. Let me think of all those ideas that I want to put in, and then you just it becomes too big and you realize that you can't make it, and so you need to cut back. Which is kind of what they said, but I just wanted to say it in that way.
Yeah. And that also, like, this sort of ties in with like the start small and like just starting with something. Like, I went to a game dev meetup in Denver, and I met this guy who had never made a game or anything before, and he was like, I want to make an MMO where like there's naturally occurring history and there's like tons of players and like it's awesome and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, have you started this yet? He's like, no. And I'm like, you're stressing me out just talking about this game. Like, based on my experience, like, you've got a long way to go. But if he had started with like a small game, sort of gotten himself warmed up, he'd know like, okay, maybe I need to be a bit more reasonable with my scope or understand my abilities more.
MMO is like the one game type that you will not ever, don't do it as your first game. You can do literally anything else before you do an MMO.
That and open world.
Oh,
Someone says open world, I'm like, no.
open world, unless it's like Minecraft. Like Minecraft is probably doable.
Because Minecraft does it by itself.
Yeah, it's procedurally generated.
Yeah, also, MMO is like, MMO isn't even a type of game. It's just, it's massively
amount of people on
multiplayer
it.
and it's online.
Yes.
There's a ton of people
No,
on one server.
your small, crappy MMOs are gonna have at minimum like a 10 overworked, or a team of 10 people that are overworked and hating their lives. So don't do it on your own, and don't do it as your first game. But there's plenty of other games that do work for a first game. So, yeah. For your first game, you really want to make sure you do something that you can accomplish. So you want to figure out what you're good at, what you're bad at, or just plain don't know, not necessarily good or bad even, and work towards that. Like for my first game, I literally just was using programming to do 100% of it. So I wrote it all in Java and printed all of it out in Java, and that was perfectly okay. People still enjoyed playing it. It was funny to the people that understood the inside jokes in it, and it was a great time for everyone. But at the same time, if you're an artist or a composer, it's for your first game, if you have an idea, it might be good to work with somebody else on their first game, or pick something that, like a point and click, where it really doesn't take much work coding-wise to go through it, and it's mostly the artwork that goes into it. And that way you can have something that you can accomplish. You're still going to learn plenty just by it being your first game. Literally just making a menu and publishing the game, if you want to publish it, are enough to learn on their own. But you can always learn something from your first game, even if it looks like it's something you can do easily. And if it is something you can do easily, you can probably do it pretty quickly. So,
like Abzu, that's like, it's so beautiful, but it's really mostly like, from what I played anyway, it's just like swimming around. Like, it's not the most mechanically intensive or anything, but it's like so pretty to look at, and you can tell that their artists were really talented and they used that to their strength. And then the second example is Mountain Blade, which is just horrendous to look at. But it's got really fun mechanics and systems, and I love the game to death. And you can tell they were like, all right, we're not artists, but we got a cool idea. So.
Like a person.
Yeah. Squint a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, and then.
And there's, like, if you're not an artist, there's plenty of free assets out there. Unity and Unreal both have their own free assets. There's all kinds of art online. Just make sure you find the CC0 or public domain. That means you're free to use it. There's also, sometimes they'll say, you know, make sure you mention me, but you're free to use it. That's just like the special thanks in the credits. A lot of times you'll see that. That special thanks, and then there's like 20 different names. That probably means they use free assets and just listed everybody out. So there's all kinds of different stuff that you can find for that, and this club is a great way to find people that complement what you're working on. So if you want someone to do art for your game and you're a programmer, there's someone in this club that I'm sure will be willing to work with you on that, or vice versa. Like, we got a composer.
Also, you went to the wrong Steam page. You did Mountain Blade more than twice. I'm sorry.
I didn't like you.
No, those are from the same game. I was lying earlier.
That's a huge shift.
It's a vibe, I guess.
No, that's the remastered version.
What, the second one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things in your first game that it's really easy to just, whatever, it's my first game, I'm not going to do it. I very much encourage you still to do it. Still make a menu, still iron out most of the bugs in your game, and like make sure that it like runs as a normal game, because when you might want to show it off, 5 years down the line, you might want to show it off when you're president of the club and you want to show off your first game because you're doing a first game meeting. It's so much less work to add in a menu and clean out the bugs and put your game online and stuff like that than it is to make your game. But it adds so much to your game. Like, you already did like 90% of the work for 50% of the game. Why not put in the other 10% of the work for the other half of the game? Like, it's just kind of an easy win, and you might as well take your easy wins while they're there. Yeah.
Plus just finishing it, just looking at it and knowing like this is done. Like I did it, I can move on.
Exactly. Like, you can finish it if you want. You can go back, make your remastered Mountain Blade or Abzu. But yep. And at the end of the day, you'll have something you can show to people. They can play it. They can enjoy it or not, depending on what your game's like. But you can be proud of your game and say, hey, I made this. Sure, it was a learning experience, but like one way or another, it's probably fun or funny, and it's a good time, and you can build something better the next time. So now we're gonna split up. Well, not split up, but you can. For our activity today, we're actually going to be a little bit more seriously minded. So,
come up with a lot of ideas lately that we haven't been super serious.
Super viable.
Maybe aren't viable. That's a good way to put it.
Were very
Yeah. They're fun games. They are viable, but
could be made.
now we're going to think of them with actually making them in mind.
Okay.
So if you've made a game, think of a game that adds or you can learn from in making it, add a little bit of new stuff to it that you haven't done before, or if you haven't made a game before, just come up with any idea that you think suits your strengths, and you can build in a reasonable amount of time. And you can come up with it, you can write this down or just come up with it in your head, but we're going to get in small groups after this and share them. And you can work it on your own, or if you want to work with someone by you, if you're already working on a game, like, you can flesh that out more and explain it to people. Like, anything goes. So
you don't have to come up with like something brand new. This is a great time to like, we all have our ideas that like we really care about. This is a great time to like get some feedback on it, see like if it is a good choice as a first game, how maybe you could do it as a first game. So
yeah. Cool. Make sense to everyone? All right, get to it. So we're gonna give you guys the time to come up and show out or present what your idea is and discuss it, talk about what parts are good for it being a first game or the next game and what you're doing, and what parts you might need to consider because it is one of your first games. So would anyone want to go first?
We'll go.
Perfect.
Don't have my notes.
Yeah, we didn't even write it. Yeah, we were just talking.
Start it off with your names and your experience in game development.
Okay, cool. Since we're all talking, should one of us have this, or should we just share? Yeah. Okay. Shit. Okay. So, my name is Matthew Ecklet.
Ooh, my name is Cannon Peterson.
And I guess since we're saying our first names twice, my name's William Clemens.
Well, back to me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a sharing. So the game idea that we had is called Amore Mio, and it's about this man, and he starts off at home, and he's single, obviously. This is obviously a romance game. And what he does is he leaves home and he travels around the world in the hopes of finding love at some point. And now I'm working on the story aspect of it, the narrative and all that. Cannon here is working on...
I'm working on, well, we're going to eventually add sound, but first we're going to, we already determined the art style. I'm going to be working on the art of the game and 2D pixel-wise, so that's what I'm working on.
And then my job is to actually make it do things. So I'm going to be the programmer, and I'm going to be sitting on my computer while these guys think they're having fun.
William is also our project manager, so like he mentioned, he's been into the Monday app, and so he's the one designating our assignments and which team we're on, a team of 4 people. We have another person, another part of our team. It's Mali. I was about to say Mally again. Mali, she's also doing art, and she's helping out with the story too, so it's also nice to have that. So that's basically the basic premise of the story, is that this man leaves home in the hopes of finding love. Throughout the game, you'll be playing a series of mini games around the world, and these mini games will have different themes, like, what did we discuss? Like, you could be... Reaction time-based.
Something like that.
Yeah. So
and then the other one was to be like puzzle solving?
Yeah. So it's a series of different types of mini games that people can complete, and as they complete and progress through the story of the game, they build up. We called it Steam, right? Like you're steamy.
Self-esteem.
If you want to call it Steam, it's Steam now.
I thought of it as Steam, like how steamy he is in like a relationship or something like that. But the point is, you build up steam throughout the game, but it won't always be out the same. It's depending on your performance throughout each minigame. And at the end of the game, depending on your esteem level, you would either find love back at home, or you would crash and burn, basically. We have yet to decide. That basically does it for the whole story aspect of it and where we're taking it. We're trying to take it step by step at the moment.
All right, so for the art style, I'm probably going to draw stuff and then bring it in once I actually get stuff. So if we do this again, I don't have anything to show you. But yeah, there you go. We don't have much to show.
Once again, as far as mechanics go, it's just the mini games and managing the esteem, and then maybe possibly different outcomes. But we believe that this was a good place to start as a video game because it's relatively simple depending on the complexity of these mini games. And I believe I have everything, like the programming for every one planned out. The problem will always be execution and bugs because programming sucks until it doesn't. He knows. But that's pretty much the whole idea. Thank you for your time. Wait, did I miss something? Did we? Yeah.
We'll open up for questions.
Yes, please give us feedback. We want it.
First off, how much experience do you guys all have with game development?
I failed several projects.
I actually took a high school year. I took one college class of programming, and I actually made a project. Don't have it anymore. I actually made 2, and they worked out pretty well. It was a storytelling game, and like you go through, it's just text necessarily, and then I also made a 3D game, a 3D model, and you go collect little balls like Sonic. Or rings, something like that. But yeah, and as far as art stuff, I've been drawing for a long time. I'm trying to get into Procreate, doing some of that, and I do have some experience from my last game with 2D art. So.
in terms of making games, I haven't worked with a team before, but I did teach myself how to use Unity, Blender. I taught myself how to program, and I've made. I wouldn't call them fully finished projects, but what I could do as a single self-taught person, I completed the full way through. I made a game where it was basically a red versus blue game where you had a laser gun and you would traverse an arena. It was basically capture the flag with lasers and all that. It was supposed to be multiplayer, but at that point I was like, yeah, that's where I cut it out. And apart from that, I also made just a simple mini game where you're a bird and you're in a forest next to a cliff, and you're supposed to save your little chicks flying in the air. From falling boulders because there's an avalanche going on, and I made music for it and everything. This whole menu screen, I made the bird model and everything, and the animations. And apart from not just in game development terms, I like to write a lot, and I have some experience doing some art just for stuff I found fun, 2D pixel art mostly. So I would say I'm pretty well rounded, but I have to put it to the test here. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear that you guys have, like, this is your third to fifth or whatever game. So you guys actually, it's not your first game per se.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that this isn't.
It'll be the first one that actually goes according to plan.
Because this is.
They look cool.
It never goes according to plan.
Of course.
No, I like your idea too, because like, as college students, you obviously have to put quite a bit of time into this on the side. But I like that you can, as long as you have a starting story and an end story, you can add any number of mini games in between, and it still is a game. You can add one or like 5.
Right.
And you can just keep adding them.
Yeah, it's not too much at once, really. Yeah. Any other questions? None?
So what are you guys using to make your game?
We're gonna use Unity for now because Unreal slaps me in the face every time I open it. So I prefer not to get slapped in the face by game engines. And
You start to like it.
yes, after it gets done slapping me in the face.
Well, that's what you like.
The pain is good.
No, not yet. There's no worth.
Yeah, so Unity and what other programs are you using? You're using Pisco?
I'm using Procreate. I might end up buying Adobe Photoshop to do stuff. I'm used to drawing comic book art, not what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to go like a gigantic feel, but 2D, 3D elements. So if anyone's played that art style, it's good. But yeah, that's what I'm kind of going for. Hopefully I can simplify muscles. Pretty much. All I draw is muscles.
Was that like the Hades and Bastion? Is that gigantic?
No, that's Overwatch.
Oh no,
Wait.
yeah. Well, Bastion, is
Wait.
Bastion?
Wait,
What are you talking
are we talking about Bastion?
There's no Hades character in
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Overwatch.
There's no Hades in Overwatch.
Do you even play that game?
No, I don't. I thought that you might have added them yesterday or something.
All right. Any other questions?
Please.
I think you're right.
Question.
I'll let you know. I think you're right.
Would these be in a specific order, or would they rotate as you go around? Or like one per part?
It would really depend on where you are in terms of the map or like the area of the world. They would all fall into those categories that William mentioned. Do you want to list them off again?
Okay.
They're just ideas that he has going on.
So, can you repeat your question again, just to make sure?
For your mini games, would they be in a specific order, or would they rotate random?
They should be each. Okay, so each encounter or like each mini game should be different. It'll have a different theme to it, but the core gameplay should be the same as the other mini game of the same type. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, good enough.
Hey.
Yes.
What if the true ending is the man learns to love himself?
We have a suggestion box.
If you would like to write a tweet and send it to us, we'll gladly.
No,
take
but
into consideration.
we were talking about that, though.
Really?
Yeah, we were.
I wasn't there for that. Oh shit.
Yeah, and throughout
I
the
totally knew
game,
that.
yeah, mini games, he eventually learns to love himself.
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys.
We apologize for taking all your time.
All right. Any other bright souls? Share their game.
I'll go next.
Don't even need it. I love it.
It's a
radiating.
triangle and a bunch of circles. So
Isn't everything just triangles?
Just a bunch of strings, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Andrew. Andrew Combs.
Sticking with the theme.
So my idea for my first game is going to be kind of like a Galaga Space Invaders bullet hell kind of thing. I guess I should go over story, right?
If it has one. Doesn't have to. First, ask questions in.
So it's actually like a revitalization of a game that I made in high school, that I made in Scratch.
You must start low to go high.
But the story in that game was you were an independent space outlaw who was contracted by the army to kill somebody. So you did. And yeah, it was very simple and very bad. So I'm hoping to make it better this time. It plays like a side-scrolling Galaga, I guess. You know, like the ship's moving from left to right and the enemies are coming from the right.
Okay. Also, is it like Gradius?
I haven't played Gradius. Probably. Is there anything else I should go over?
Game development experience?
Scratch. Yeah, I tried to learn Unity once, but I kind of got ahead of myself and kind of gave up on it. I have some experience coding, I guess. I did coding for 2 or 3 years in high school, and I'm a computer science major, so I'm learning more of it now.
I think that's a great first game. It's a proven concept. Like, they're always fun. You don't have to put too much work into like the art.
Yeah.
For it to be serviceable, and it'll teach you like a ton on the way. So.
And I think really good at Unity or any other game I'm doing, it would be fairly straightforward to figure out how to get that to work out. Or coding is simple, but still limited.
Any other questions, comments, and/or concerns?
Just did you have an art style in mind?
Just like basic like pixel art kind of thing, you know?
Did you want to? So when you walk into the trap, you've activated this trap card. Magical cylinder.
I'm not an artist, so I feel like just kind of learning with that would be a good first step.
Cool.
Awesome.
Who would like to go next?
Please, more people.
The artwork, it's a bunch of circles and triangles.
Thanks.
You don't have to actually be planning on making this game, but just first game ideas. Suckered another one in. Hook, line, and sinker. Thank you.
Cool. I'm Sasha. I've never made a game before, and I've never had an idea for a game, so I just thought of one on the spot when we were discussing earlier, and this is what came out of my mouth. So the idea is it's like a platformer, but vertical. Ooh. All right. Okay. Game changing, I know. So the premise is there's a tree, and you have to climb the tree. And you're just climbing the tree, but it's thinner at the bottom, and it gets bigger the farther you go up, and the branches get thicker too, so it's the other way around. And you like encounter different animals as you go up. Like you'll start off with like chipmunks and squirrels, like things that belong in trees. But you gradually get like ducks, chickens. You get up to like, okay, we have a cow now. All right, don't know how that got there. And the premise is you just keep going up and up, and you have the choice. You can fight them or don't fight them. Genocide route, pacifist route, or a mixture of the two. I don't know. Depends how you're feeling. If you're feeling spicy or not. You keep climbing. The end goal I haven't thought of, but you eventually just keep going up. Like at the very top, there's an ocean. There's a blue whale there.
You realize you're in the world tree. And
Yeah, there you go. You're in the world tree. That's what's happening. Yeah.
he's the boss.
Yeah, and the premise, like, if you do choose to fight them, you like, it'll go like, 2D plane, like Smash kind of like fighting. You'll go onto a branch and you'll fight like that. But otherwise, like in between the encounters with these animals and whatnot, you'll be gathering like resources, something like that, like on the way up, like fruits, sticks, bird droppings. I don't know, whatever is in a tree. All right, that was my idea. Anybody else have any questions? Anything to add? Yes.
Play Doodle Jump.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, I'm getting old. I forgot. It's just like a phone app where you just like you're always jumping and you have to like jump to the next platform and go as high as you can.
Oh, I have seen that. Okay.
Might be a good reference just to get like ideas for how that works. But yeah, I like moving up.
Moving up is
That's
fun.
awesome.
All right. Yeah.
Does it work in the vein of like getting over it, where if you fall, you're at the very beginning again?
That sounds awful. No.
It's
We'll
really awful.
Or it could be like a score-based game, and like the higher you go, the higher you score.
Nah, we'll put checkpoints in it. I don't like playing games where you have to restart. That's just
You know, like roguelikes.
no.
Kind of like Temple Run in that sense.
No.
You want to keep going.
No, it's like there might be a story to it. And like you could have like scroll, like the background sky will change colors and the music will layer on top of itself the more you go up and like change into different music, just different environmental feels.
So I'm curious, what is your opinion for that as a first game?
For a first game?
Yeah. If you were to work on that, say with one other person that was also their first game, like, how do you think that would go?
Probably poorly. I think it's too much.
I'd agree that.
I think it's too much.
You realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much.
Mhm.
It could go like the tempo runner route or the doodle jump where you're just trying to get a high score and then like avoid enemies as you go up. That's a pretty simple game.
Mhm.
The bullet hell. So if you wanted the first game, that would be a good one. But I do like your idea of the game. When you started mentioning resources and stuff, I got a whole different twist on how this game was going along.
Yeah, the core is definitely doable. There's a lot you could do for sure. Yeah.
For a start, it might even. I don't know. For a start, it might even be better to just like you don't go into a new thing to fight the animals. You just kind of jump on them or jump past them.
Yeah.
That's the decision. Right way to.
Is that all? Alrighty.
Any other ideas? Any other first games? Any other next games in what you're making?
Next games.
If you've already made however many games and you want the next game that you've come up with to be sure.
You want me to talk about my first game?
Sure. Yeah, talk about your first game.
Yeah, my first complete game I made.
It's a wonderful story, friends.
Oh dear.
Story time with Aiden.
Oh boy, guys. Hey. My first game was. Oh, my name is Aiden McMenemy.
Is this a TED Talk?
Hey, welcome to my TED Talk. Gosh darn it, you guys! I keep going with your jokes, and I'm bad at getting back on track. Okay, so my first game was essentially I just followed I followed Sean Spaulding's Game Maker tutorial on how to create a. That wasn't me. On how to create a platformer, and then then after going through a bunch of those tutorials, I stopped it and I was like, okay, now I'm going to add my own stuff. And so I did that. I figured out how to get the mouse cursor, and I made it so that you could draw platforms with the mouse. And then I realized that wait, if you could just draw as many platforms as you like, then you could just go anywhere. And so I made it so that drawing platforms counts down on a resource. Then I realized, wait, you're going to run out. And so I added little ink blobs that the player can collect to get more ink, and made it so that killing enemies gave you more ink.
It's pretty dope.
And so,
Good idea.
still, yeah. I mean, I made it. It's been created. It's just not. The level design isn't good, but it exists, and that's the important thing. Yes.
For a first game, how would you say it went? What was good about it? What was bad about it?
I think it was pretty good overall. Starting out by just following a tutorial and like copying everything exactly and then branching off, I think is a good path. It wasn't, I guess it wasn't my first, I call that my first game because the other one I made, I didn't finish it. So that was the first complete game. The bad things about it, I guess there was a lot of stuff I had to look up, but that's gonna happen no matter what, so.
Yeah. So it was a good one, though.
Yeah, I think so. That was my take. Yes.
About how long did it take for you to finish it?
Oh, heck. Okay, I don't have a good answer for this because like I worked on it for a while and then I stopped, and I honestly don't remember how much time I put into it. It was in high school. Maybe a few months, but it was off and on, and yeah, I don't know. So yeah, there you go, everybody. Find it now at aidenmick.com.
I think that'll be it for today, unless someone really, really wants to share something. So, cool. Going on, this weekend's workshop is Intro to Blender. Don't need to know anything, but please install Blender before the workshop so you don't have to install it there. Want to make sure you're started on track. I'm gonna be making boat, obstacles in a river and stuff like that for the workshop next weekend, where we'll do intro to coding, and we'll have people move around on the river and avoid those obstacles on their boat. So, yep. If you have anything like one of these ideas that you want to carry forward but want help on or something, feel free to share before next meeting. Come talk to us now or next meeting. And if you want to pay dues, or if you want one of these t-shirts, $5 for the t-shirt, come talk to Aiden afterwards and he'll try to find your size.
I guess I'm the one. Also, if you gave me money for a t-shirt before, I forgot to ask you for your size. So please come and tell me
too.
That.
All right. Go forth, make games be awesome.
Woo, yeah.